And finally, let's take a look at some of the logos we have within Group C, starting off with 17 Gaming. Color scheme of a kind of gray and orange goes well together. Don't know where I've seen that before. I like the choice to have the tiger not be where the orange is. It almost feels like a monochrome image of the tiger against the background, almost inverting the roles. And having the tiger itself and the head that's coming out and roaring on the side of the screen, making the shape of the 7 with those nice little swirly patterns coming down towards the side as the thick orange 1 lays there by itself. This is just a really, really well put together logo. But the angles, it's got the curvature. I think this shows that while what New Happy did with their logo with the like multiple shades of the same color to get the depth on the face of the animal, it can work and it can look quite good. The fact that they've managed to have essentially the same effect here, just using 2 colors, gray and white. Yeah, really good. Beautiful design and well worthy of a spot being hung up in the Louvre. Next, we have Cerberus continuing our run of animal-themed logos. The 3-headed dog. This one reminds me a little bit of maybe like an 8-bit video game. Nothing to do with the shape or the pixels, the squares, but simply the fact of it having a limited color palette and yet getting so much detail out of it. The way they've used the same shade of the dark red to give the background of the fire, but also putting in those sort of creases and markings on the face of the hounds, including the red star on the forehead, which could well represent the Vietnamese flag. Subtle little hints of orange just poking through here and there, giving a bit of 3-dimensional depth to the flames. I think this is another example of a logo that when you kind of blow it up to this size, you can really look at and appreciate some of the detail and the artistry that's gone into it. But you shrink this thing down, you're going to lose so much of it. Like before you watch this, did anyone know that there was a star on the forehead of the dog in the middle? Did anyone see there was almost a slight reflection of the orange on the bottom of the lettering in the word Cerberus to show that almost the flames are glinting back off the metal that it's made of? I think while it is definitely a good piece of artwork, I think this might be another offender of the reason that teams like to simplify their logos these days. And while I do like it, I'm just gonna have to say for that reason, it's alright. Now then, Daytrade. Speaking of simplifying their animal logo, not too long ago they simplified it down to the bear and the bull in their simplest forms. No attempt at getting any sort of 3D depth, just pure silhouette. They've managed to do it again in a very stylized way, using those gaps and negative space to create the depth. Looking at the bull's horns in particular, it really gives the impression that they're on opposite sides of the head, despite the fact that realistically it's just drawn slightly in front. Also got the classic shield shape, but a little bit bulbous, a little bit thick. And with the spear pointing straight through the middle, the animals facing opposite directions, the kind of jagged edges down the side does give the impression that they're sort of fierce and ready to take on all comers. I'd say this went down as a very successful rebrand, but keeping the themes of the team alive with the bull. I'm saying this is a prime example of how to simplify a logo and keep it still on brand. For that reason, it should be hung in the Louvre. Next up, Petrichor Road. We've seen a few circles so far. This time we're getting a semicircle with just letters inside of it. If you didn't know what this logo was, you'd assume it's maybe some kind of public relations company or press release or personal rearranging company, something a little bit corporate. It doesn't really give the impression of a gaming company. I think it's very sort of unthreatening colors, which it just seems a little more cool. But I suppose if you name your esports team after the smell that you get when it's been raining, yeah, you've probably thrown any signs of being a tough guy out of the window with that one. I don't think it's a total disaster. It just feels a little bit unfit for purpose. So unfortunately, we're going to have to throw this one in mid. Next up, oh, jeez. See what I mean about threatening logos? Fuck me. Getting jump scared by a polar bear, like, that's kind of threatening. That's a little bit spooky. Just ask this guy. Not ideal, is it? And that's a polar bear that, despite the fact they've used very curvaceous lines, softened the edges a lot, that boy still looks pissed. They've done a pretty good job again of getting some depth, particularly in the nose where it almost You can kind of feel the roundness of the snout at the end, despite the fact that it's only using 2 colors, and even using those same colors to really get the jagged edges of the teeth showing through as well, and then maintaining the eye and the V in the background with the same color of orange. It's another example of a very simple logo, but very effective. It gives a similar concept to 17 Gaming's logo, but I think on that front, it loses a little bit of maybe the background detail. The way that 17 Gaming got both numbers incorporated into their logo the way they did, whereas there's no P to be found here. It's just a V and a polar bear, which I guess starts with a P, but it doesn't really count. But that doesn't stop it from being bloody lovely. And now, Howl. Is it though? Does he look like he's howling? Looks like a kind of good boy. Doesn't look like he's howling. He's got a frown. Frown Esports. I don't hate the fact that they went for a rebrand, that they redesigned their logo, and this time going for a symmetric pattern where it's mirrored on one side to the other, trying to get a little bit more shapeliness, a little bit more curvaceous edges on the side. I think it's just lost a little bit of the charm from the original though. I mean, this boy is howling. This guy is mad at you because you haven't given him any snacks yet. Yeah, I think their old logo, it's not perfect, but I think it was better. And unfortunately, that means that their new logo is, sorry boys, back to the drawing board. You're gonna have to burn this one. Second to last team in Group C, we have GNL Esports. And this guy looks like a total prick. He looks like a kid in the playground who's just like broken a window and then ran away so you get blamed for it, and he's just looking back at you like looks like the antagonist of some 2008 Flash browser game that you'd play on Newgrounds where everything is a stick man. It just kind of just looks like this. I don't know. It's a circle. I don't mind the fact that it's kind of off-centered. That makes it a little bit less annoying. You know, it at least has an attempt at getting some depth in there. But they didn't even bother getting the eyes the same color, you know? And then the gradient across the teeth, like, why there and nowhere else? I think if they want their brand identity to be the bad guys of the scene, this is a pretty good logo for them to have. But in terms of the execution of it, I don't love it. So I'm going to have to put this one in mid. And finally, we have Falcons. I just looked it up, and no, this is not the same green as in the Saudi Arabia flag. Probably not a coincidence that this green color scheme has come through on this logo, which is okay. You know, green is an underutilized color within esports, and you can definitely see the resemblance of the bird sticking through the kind of feathered wings flying out, again vaguely making that shield, makes it into a nice crest. Maybe lacking a little bit of detail. They could have maybe cut into those feathers a little bit to make them look a little more like feathers. The bird has a very slight ridge where its beak begins but no eyeballs, and the body is, he's been eviscerated at some point, evidently. I think it's a good concept. It's a nice idea. I think it feels a little unbalanced in some places, particularly towards the bottom. The length of some of those wavy lines is just too long on the left, and there's just nothing at all on the right to kind of compensate and balance it out. But I think with the color scheme as well, overall, this logo comes out looking quite good. I'll say it's aight for now. That is our tier list of teams who are going to be competing at PGS. Feel free to take this out of context and use it as how I think that the teams are going to do at PGS. Would kind of be a dick move, but if you want to do that, then fine. And if you think I've misplaced any of these teams and you want to let me know about it in the comments, please don't.